The first thing I noticed was the translator's color, not the light of its status ring, not the usual soft, reassuring pulse that meant languages aligned, misunderstandings minimized, but the literal blanching of its bioceramic faceplate. It went from pearl gray to the dull white of old bone in the space of a breath. And the second thing I noticed was the human's hands. Envoy Mara Ellis kept them folded neatly on the table, as if she were attending a quiet meal instead of standing trial before the 10-species council, under the gravity of a station that did not belong to her, in a chamber designed to make even the tallest beings feel small. Laughter ricocheted through the council hall like loose bolts in a turbine. It wasn't cruel at first, not openly. It was the kind of laughter that said, "This will be quick. This will be easy. This will be a story we tell later to amuse hatchlings." Then, the translator went pale. And the laughter died so suddenly that I heard the air system shift, like a nervous inhale. "My name is Selak of the Verani Concord. I was assigned to the council as a liaison scribe, a minor position that keeps one close enough to power to smell its ozone, but never close enough to touch it. I have 3 arms, 2 eyes that see into the near-infrared, and a throat sac that tightens when I am afraid." At that moment, my throat sac tightened so hard I tasted iron. The human's gaze moved, slowly, deliberately, across the dais, across the glimmering screens of law and precedent, across the counselors arranged in a semicircle like predators pretending to be judges. She did not flinch. She did not plead. She did not raise her voice. She only said, through the translator that was now failing to keep its composure, "I am here to prevent your extinction." And the translator, as if it had understood the full weight of those words in every tongue at once, went paler still. Council Chamber, Orbit of Vera. The council hall was built inside the hollowed spine of an ancient megastructure, a relic of the first starfarers who had carved cities into dead moons and called it humility. The ceiling arched so high that the lights became a constellation of their own bright points embedded in black plating. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic resin and warm metal, a compromise between species that breathed through gills, lungs, spiracles, and membrane pores. The gravity was tuned to a median comfort, which meant it was slightly too heavy for my people. I could feel it pressing my shoulder joints down, making my third arm want to rest. The humans, I'd been told, came from a world that crushed its inhabitants with full standard pull. They should have been slower here, softer. But Mara Ellis stood like gravity was a rumor. She wore no ceremonial crest, no jeweled harness, no cast ribbons. Only a plain dark suit with a small patch stitched over the left breast, a simple circle cut by 3 diagonal lines, like a planet being measured. The other envoys were ornaments. The Kethrix shimmered with all-slick scales and carried a scent of citrus ammonia that strung my nostrils. The Thalen wore woven light, literal photonic cloth that shifted in patterns meant to hypnotize and soothe. Even the council's own guards carried engraved weapons. Mara carried nothing. That was why the laughter had started. Councillor Dral was the worst of it, as always. Dral of the Kethrix hegemon leaned forward, his crest flaring with amusement. His mouth, more of a hinged beak lined with blunt grinding plates, clicked in a way that signaled mockery in his culture. He was large enough that even the median gravity could not hide his predatory mass. He enjoyed reminding everyone that the Kethrix had conquered 3 border systems in the last 10 cycles. Dral's translator made his voice smooth for our ears, but the rhythm of his native clicks still came through like stones striking glass. "You come from a new species with no council seat, no fleet registry, no treaty lineages, and you claim you will prevent our extinction." He spread his arms, displaying the scars of old wars like medals. "Your ships are small," he continued. "Your weapons are quaint, your colonies are sparse, and your envoy arrives without entourage, without tribute, without a single ceremonial blade. Are humans unaware of how council proceedings work?" A ripple of laughter, not only from Dral, but from the Thalen delegate, whose luminous tendrils brightened in a pattern that meant polite derision. From the Lauren, who exhaled a cloud of scented vapor that carried the chemical signature of amusement. even from my own superior, elder son of Vera, who covered his mouth with one long-fingered hand in a gesture that was meant to soften the insult. I did not laugh, not because I admired the human, but because I had read the first contact dossiers. Humans were deathworlders, not the mythic kind. Those were stories used to frighten hatchlings into obedience, but the documented kind. A species that evolved under harsh gravity, unpredictable weather, predators that hunted with teeth and venom, and microbial life that treated flesh like a feast. Deathworlders were rare. Most died before they reached the stars, and those that survived tended to be difficult. Our first encounters with humans had been confusing. Their transmissions were clear, their mathematics elegant, their ships functional. But their behavior, it did not align with galactic norms. They offered aid without contract. They sent rescue craft into radiation storms. They asked for nothing in return, except the right to keep asking questions. The Council had granted them a provisional observer status, mostly to keep them close enough to watch. And now, after only 4 cycles, they had sent an envoy to demand emergency speaking rights. That alone was an insult in some cultures. Mara Ellis waited through the laughter, as if she were waiting for a tool to finish calibrating. When it died down, the presiding voice of the council, Arch-Moderator Iln, spoke from behind a veil of translucent screens. Iln was Thalen, a being of light and soft matter, their body a column of shifting glow contained by a lattice suit. Iln's voice was always calm, always tuned to soothe. Envoy Ellis, Iln said, the council has granted you 3 minutes to justify this interruption. Your petition claims knowledge of an incoming threat. Your evidence packet was incomplete. Mara inclined her head. The gesture was small, almost casual, but it carried a strange weight, like a gravity well disguised as a nod. Thank you for the time, she said. My evidence packet was incomplete because you denied our request to send physical samples through your quarantine gates. Draal clicked again, annoyed now rather than amused. Iln's glow flickered. The gates are for sanctioned traffic. You are not sanctioned. Mara's eyes moved to the translator, and for the first time I noticed something odd. The translator unit was not council-issued. It bore no crest of the Thalen Linguistic Guild. It was human-made, sleek, angular, with a faint hum that reminded me of distant thunder. And then, as if responding to her glance, the human translator's faceplate paled. It wasn't supposed to. Translators were machines or standardized buyer interfaces designed to be neutral. For a translator to show fear meant one of 2 things. Either it was malfunctioning, or it was reacting to content it was not meant to process. Mara spoke again. In 8 days, she said, a signal will arrive at your outer listening arrays. It will look like background noise at first. Your analysts will mark it low priority because it doesn't fit any known pattern. Iln's voice held a faint edge. You cannot know this. We can, Mara said, because it already arrived at ours. The chamber shifted. I felt it physically, like the air had thickened. The councillor's body language changed in species-specific ways. The Lawrence vapor turned sharp with alarm. The Thalen's light dimmed to a defensive hue. The Kethrix's crest tightened. Elder San glanced at me, his eyes narrowing. He had not been told this. Mara continued. The signal is a handshake, not to you, to your gates. Draal's beak plates ground together. Your words are vague. You want fear to buy you status. Mara's hands remained folded. I want survival, she said. Your gate network is old. You didn't build it. You inherited it. You maintain it. You worship it. You do not understand it. That last line landed like a slap. In the Concord, we did not accuse someone of worship lightly. It implied superstition, weakness. The Council's legitimacy rested on the gate network. Without it, the Council was a set of species trapped in their own clusters, no faster-than-light unity, no shared law. Iln's voice cooled. Watch your phrasing, Envoy. Mara nodded again. Let me be precise. Your gate network is being called. Something is out there that knows how to speak to it. And when your gates answer, the thing on the other end will step through. A murmur, a rustle of membranes, a flicker of light, the scrape of claws on polished stone. Drow laughed again, but it was sharper, less certain. You make claims of ancient enemies, of mythical builders returning. We have no evidence. Mara's gaze locked on him. You will, she said, because the first gate that answers won't open into empty space. It will open into a shipyard. Elder San's throat sac fluttered. Shipyards were the heart of fleets. Open one into an enemy incursion, and you didn't lose a system. You lost your ability to defend any system. Iln paused. For half a second, the Thalen Arch-Moderator's glow faltered in a way that suggested calculation rather than serenity. You have 3 minutes, Iln reminded her, but now the words sounded like a shield rather than a courtesy. Mara unfolded her hands. She placed a small object on the table. It was no bigger than a seed pod, dark metal with etched lines. It made no sound, but the air around it seemed to vibrate faintly, like a pressure change before a storm. My infrared vision picked up a heat gradient that didn't match the room. This, Mara said, is a sample of the signal. We built an interpreter to isolate it. We could not send it through your gates, because your quarantine would incinerate it as unknown biohazard. Drow leaned forward, eyes narrowing. And you brought it here instead, in violation of protocol. Yes, Mara said. Because protocol is not a shield against physics. The translator's faceplate went pale again, and then, without warning, the object on the table emitted a sound, not audible, not exactly. It was a vibration that resonated in my bones, in my throat sac, in the soft tissues behind my eyes. The lights in the ceiling flickered once, synchronized, as if the chamber itself had flinched. The council guards shifted, weapons half raised. Mara held up one hand and open palm, a human gesture that meant stop. The sound stopped. The chamber exhaled. Iln's voice was very quiet now. What was that? That, Mara said, was it saying hello? Observer gallery, minutes later. They escorted us out, not violently, not with weapons pressed to skin, but with the kind of firm politeness that meant the council had decided the human Env was either a threat or a liability, and both were dangerous. As liaison scribe, I was not meant to leave the chamber during a hearing, but Arch-Moderator Iln had ordered a recess, and in the confusion I found myself in the observer gallery corridor, standing near a transparent bulkhead that looked out into the station's docking ring. Ships hung there like fruit in a metal orchard, sleek Thalen cutters, bulky Lauren cargo barges, needle-thin Verani couriers, and among them docked at Bay 17 was the human vessel. It looked wrong, not because it was ugly. It was honest. It had no decorative fins, no ceremonial lighting, no obvious intimidation. It was a cylinder with modular pods attached like barnacles, painted a matte gray that swallowed reflections. Its docking clamps were overbuilt, its hull plating thick. A working ship, an engineer's ship, a ship built by a species that expected things to go wrong and planned accordingly. Mara stood beside me, hands behind her back, gaze fixed on her own vessel as if it were a friend waiting patiently. Elder San approached her, his expression tight. Env Ellis, he said, you have embarrassed the council. You have brought an unknown device into the chamber. I brought proof, Mara said. You brought fear, San corrected. Mara's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Fear is appropriate. San's third eyelid blinked in irritation. You are new. You do not understand how slowly the council moves. Threats are evaluated, committees are formed, votes are taken. And in 8 days, Mara said, your listening arrays will receive a handshake, your committees will not understand. San looked away, as if the bulkhead view could offer him escape. You have no authority here. Mara's voice softened. You're right. That surprised him. It surprised me too. Humans were supposed to be stubborn in the loud way. Mara was stubborn like a locked door. Then why, San demanded, did you come? Mara's gaze finally shifted from her ship to the corridor lights. They cast pale bands across her face. Her eyes reflected them like polished stone. Because you don't know what you're sitting on, she said, and because humans have a rule. San's throat sac fluttered. A rule. Mara nodded once. If we find a fire, we don't argue about whose house it is. That was one of the human cultural violations. In council space, aid without contract was considered either a trap or a declaration of superiority. You did not interfere in another species' crisis unless invited and compensated. It kept the peace. It kept the balance. Humans did not like that balance. San's voice turned colder. You presume there is a fire. Mara's translator hummed faintly, its faceplate returning to normal coloration with effort. I know there is. Before San could respond, the Kethric's guard stepped into the corridor. Behind him was Councillor Dral himself, crest flared wide, his scent sharp with dominance. Env, Dral said, your device will be seized for analysis. Mara turned to face him. It will not. Dral's beak plates clicked. It is now council property. You brought it into council space. Mara did not move. If you take it, you will trigger it. Empty threat, Dral snapped. Mara's gaze held steady. It's not a threat, it's engineering. For a moment Dral looked uncertain. Not afraid, Kethrix did not show fear easily, but irritated by the idea that a small, soft species could speak of engineering as if it were law. Seize it, Dral ordered. 2 guards stepped forward, and the human translator, Mara's translator, went pale again. Not a slow blanching this time, but a sudden, stark white, like a creature losing blood. The guards froze. Mara's voice dropped to something almost gentle. Don't. Dral's crest tightened. What is that device? Mara exhaled. It's not a bomb. Then what? Dral hissed. Mara's eyes flicked to me, then back to Dral. It's a language sample, a key, and it's connected to our isolation lab back on the ship. If you pull it out of range, the lab assumes containment breach and triggers sterilization. San's throat sac tightened. Sterilization. Mara nodded. Radiation flood. Nothing survives, including your corridor. Dral's beak plates ground. You brought a containment-linked device into council space. Yes, Mara said, because you wouldn't let us bring it the safe way. Dral's eyes narrowed to slits. You are reckless. Mara's expression did not change. I'm responsible. The difference between those words seemed to confuse him. Iln's voice came over the corridor speakers then, calm but firm. Env, Ellis will return to her ship under escort. Her device will remain with her until council review. Dral's crest flared in frustration, but he stepped back. Mara turned toward Bay 17. As she walked, I noticed something else. The human moved with a slight limp, not obvious, not dramatic, but there. A stiffness in her right leg when the gravity pressed. She was not immune to the station's weight. She was enduring it. And for the first time, the laughter in the council chamber felt like a mistake rather than an insult. Maintenance Bay, Deep Drift Station, 2 days earlier. I should explain how I ended up as the one watching a translator go pale. 2 days before the council hearing, I was not on Vera Station. I was on Deep Drift Station, a frontier outpost clinging to the edge of mapped space like a barnacle on a whale. Deep Drift was where smugglers refueled, where salvagers sold scrap, where small disputes turned into bloodless brawls and sometimes into brief, ugly wars. The station smelled of coolant leaks and fermented algae. The lights were dimmer, the corridors narrower, and the gravity irregular, pulsing slightly as the old spin rings adjusted to compensate for uneven mass distribution. I was there because Elder San had sent me to deliver treaty updates to a Vairani patrol captain. A routine task, meant to keep me useful but unimportant, and that was when the human ship arrived. It didn't announce itself with fanfare. It docked quietly, requested repair materials, and filed an emergency petition for council audience. The station master laughed. The dockworkers laughed. Even I briefly felt the reflexive skepticism. Humans were new. Humans were small. Humans were, if you believed the gossip, too earnest for galactic politics. Then I saw what they carried into the maintenance bay, not weapons, not cargo, people. Refugees, hauled from a crippled Lauren freighter that had drifted too close to a radiation storm. The humans had cut them free, dragged them through failing corridors, and ferried them to Deep Drift Station without asking for payment. The Lauren refugees were huge, heavy-bodied beings with thick skin and a slow metabolism. They were not easy to move. Their bodies smelled of salt and mineral oil, and their breathing was a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. Human crew members, thin, pale in the dim light, sweating under the station's weaker gravity shift, moved among them with practiced coordination. One human, a medic with sleeves rolled up, knelt beside a Lauren juvenile and spoke softly while pressing a patch to the juvenile's side. The patch glowed faintly, warming as it sealed a minor tear. The Lauren juvenile's eyes, wide and glossy, tracked the human's face with disbelief. "Why," the juvenile's translator murmured, "are you doing this?" The medic didn't pause. "Because you're hurt." "But you will gain nothing," the juvenile insisted. The medic snorted. "I gain you not dying on my watch." That was the human rescue ethic, irrational, uncompensated, and somehow contagious. Even the station master, who had been grumbling about docking fees, fell silent. I watched Mara Ellis step into the bay then. She was not the medic. She was not the captain. She wore the same plain suit, but her hands were stained faintly with grease, as if she had helped with repairs before coming ashore. She approached the station master, a Thalen administrator whose light was a weary amber. "I need access to your long-range array," Mara said. The station master's tendrils brightened in irritation. "You are not authorized." Mara nodded. "I know, I'm asking anyway." The station master's glow shifted to amusement. "Humans, always asking anyway." Mara's expression remained calm. "Please." The station master sighed, as if indulging a child. "Why?" Mara leaned in slightly, her voice dropped. "Because something just spoke to our senses," she said, "and it's going to speak to yours next." That was the first time I saw a Thalen's light turn from amusement to unease. "What kind of something?" the station master asked. Mara's eyes flicked to the refugees, to the medic, to the dockworkers. "The kind," she said, "that doesn't care about borders." The station master hesitated. In council space, hesitation was weakness. On the frontier, hesitation was survival. Finally, the station master gestured with a tendril. 5 minutes, you touch nothing else." Mara nodded and walked toward the array access hatch. I followed at a distance, curiosity tugging at me like a hook. Inside the array room, the air was colder, smelling of ozone and dust. The walls were lined with old cables that vibrated faintly with power. The array itself was a ring of sensors, each one tuned to different bands of electromagnetic noise. Mara moved like someone who belonged there, not like a diplomat, but like a technician. She connected a small device, like the one she later brought to the council, to the array interface. The human translator unit on her wrist hummed, and then the room filled with that bone-deep vibration. My throat sac tightened. My third arm curled reflexively. Mara stared at the display. "There," she whispered, "that's it." The station master's light flickered nervously. "What is it?" Mara's fingers moved across the interface, fast and precise. "It's a pattern, embedded in noise. It's not meant for us, it's meant for the gate network." The station master's translator buzzed. "Impossible, the gates are sealed systems, they do not listen." Mara's mouth tightened. "They do, they just don't tell you." That was the second human cultural violation. They spoke to infrastructure as if it were an adversary. Most species treated ancient tech as sacred, or at least untouchable. Humans treated it like a puzzle that might kill you if you didn't solve it. The station master's glow dimmed. "If you are wrong." Mara's hands paused. For the first time, I saw exhaustion in her posture, a slight sag in her shoulders. "If I'm wrong," she said, "then I just scared a room full of people for nothing, and I'll apologize. I can live with that." As she resumed, the display shifted, translating the signal into something visual, a repeating sequence of pulses, too regular to be natural, too complex to be random. Mara's translator unit, the human-made one, emitted a faint tone, and its faceplate, yes, it had a small faceplate, turned slightly paler. The station master noticed. Your translator is reacting. Mara glanced at it. It's not just translating, it's modeling intent. The station master's glow turned sharp. Machines cannot model intent. Mara's lips pressed together. Ours can, sometimes I wish it couldn't. She unplugged the device carefully, as if handling a venomous insect. I need to take this to the council, she said. The station master's tendrils coiled. They will laugh. Mara's eyes lifted. They can laugh, the signal doesn't care. Council chamber, orbit of Vera present. They did laugh, and now after the recess, the council had reconvened with a different kind of energy, less amused, more predatory. Mara stood alone again at the center table, her device secured in a containment cradle. The council had placed additional guards, and a Thalen Linguistic Guild representative sat near the arch-moderator. They glow a cool, analytical blue. I sat behind Elder San, stylus ready, throat sack tight. Arch-moderator Iln spoke first. Env, Ellis. The council has reviewed your petition and your partial evidence. You will now answer questions. Dral leaned forward immediately, eager. You claim a signal will open a gate into a shipyard. Which shipyard? Mara's answer was immediate. The Kethrik's shipyard at Sarnath Junction. A ripple, Dral's crest flared. You lie. Mara's gaze did not waver. I do not. Elder San inhaled sharply. Sarnath Junction was not only a shipyard, it was a gate nexus. Dozens of trade routes passed through it. If it fell, half the council's logistics would collapse. Iln's voice remained calm, but the light behind the veil intensified slightly. How do you know this target? Mara tapped the containment cradle gently. Because the signal is directional. It's calling specific gates. Your network responds based on topology. The handshake sequence maps onto your gate lattice like a key fitting multiple locks. The Thalen linguistic representative leaned forward. Your translation is metaphor. Provide technical clarity. Mara nodded. The signal contains a set of phase offsets that match the gate's field harmonics. We tested it against our own short-range prototype gate. Yes, humans built a prototype gate, not a full one, a lab model. The signal forced it to attempt an activation sequence. The chamber went still. Humans had built a gate, not a full one, not a network. But even a lab model implied they had done something the council's species had not. They had tried to understand the ancient tech rather than merely maintain it. Dral's beak plates clicked in sudden anger. You tampered with forbidden technology. Mara's expression tightened. We studied it. Forbidden, Dral insisted, crest flaring higher. The gate network is not to be altered. It is the foundation of civilization. Mara's voice sharpened, the first real edge I'd heard from her. Civilization doesn't survive by refusing to learn. That line hit like a shock. Even Elder San's posture stiffened. Iln raised a tendril. Envoy, you will restrain your rhetoric. Mara exhaled. The edge faded. She returned to calm. We didn't alter your network, she said. We built our own lab model to understand the signal. And what we found is this. The handshake is designed to trick the gate into thinking it's talking to its original builders. A murmur of fear. Even the Kethrik's guards shifted. The original builders were a ghost story. A civilization so old that its ruins were older than recorded history. The council's species had found the gates, learned to maintain them, and built an empire of trade and law on top of them. If something could pretend to be the builders, it meant the gates were not ours. Not really. The Thalen representative's glow dimmed. Why would a hostile entity do this? Mara's eyes flicked to the ceiling lights, then back. Because the gates are everywhere, if you control them, you control everything. Draal leaned back, crest trembling. And you claim to know how to stop it. Mara hesitated, just a fraction, and in that hesitation, I felt the first true crack in her calm. I claim, she said carefully, to know how to slow it, and maybe to redirect it. Iln's voice sharpened, maybe. Mara nodded once, yes. That was another human violation. In council hearings, you did not admit uncertainty. Uncertainty was weakness, and weakness invited exploitation. Mara admitted it anyway, and instead of weakening her, it made her feel honest, dangerous in a different way, a being who did not need to pretend. Elder San leaned toward his microphone. Env, Ellis, if your claim is true, why come to us? Why not simply close your own gates, isolate your systems? Mara's gaze met his. We don't have gates, not real ones. We have one lab model. We're not on your network yet. A wave of realization. Humans were not gate-linked. They traveled by conventional FTL, slower, limited. That was why they seemed insignificant, why their colonies were sparse, why their ships were small. They weren't weak. They were just not plugged into the Council's bloodstream. Draal clicked softly. Then you are irrelevant. This threat is ours. Mara's voice was quiet. It will be yours first, then it will be everyone's. The Thalen representative leaned forward, glow sharp. How? If humans are not gate-linked. Mara's hands unfolded again. She rubbed her thumb against her finger, a small human nervous habit. Because you will flee, she said. When the gates become unsafe, you'll try to move resources by conventional FTL. You'll push traffic into lanes that aren't designed for it. You'll strain nav beacons. You'll collapse trade. You'll create wars. And eventually, someone will come to our region to take what they lost. Silence, not because her logic was flawless, but because it was brutally plausible. Iln's voice softened again, soothing. Env, Ellis, you have given us predictions. You have given us fear. Now give us actionable steps. Mara nodded. Step 1, isolate Sarnath Junction, shut down its gate access, physically sever its gate control nodes. Draal's crest flared. Unthinkable, it would cripple our shipyard, our trade. It would save it, Mara said. Draal leaned forward, anger vibrating in his posture. You ask us to cut our own arteries, based on the word of a species, with no seat. Mara's calm returned like a shield. I'm not asking you to trust my status, I'm asking you to trust the math. The Thalen representative made a gesture, and screens lit with the human-provided data. Waveforms, harmonic models, simulations, and as the Council's analysts looked, their body language changed. Skeptics leaning closer, lights dimming in concentration, vapor turning thoughtful instead of amused. Draal watched them, and his anger shifted into something darker. Fear, he didn't want to show it, so he turned it into aggression. Even if this is true, Draal said, why should we let humans interfere? Perhaps this is your own doing. Perhaps you created this signal to weaken our gate network. A classic political obstacle, suspicion, scapegoating. It was the easiest way to avoid action, blame the messenger. Mara didn't react with outrage, she reacted with impatience. Councillor Draal, she said, if humans had this capability, we wouldn't be standing here asking for permission. Draal's crest trembled. You underestimate the value of deception. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. No, we invented it too. A ripple of discomfort. Even I felt my throat sac tighten again. Humans admitting to deception openly was unsettling. Iln raised a tendril. Enough. Councillor Draal, your accusation requires evidence. Do you have any? Draal hesitated. A Kethrix without immediate dominance was like a blade without edge. No, he snapped. Iln's glow shifted in subtle relief. Then we proceed. Mara's next words were what changed everything. Step 2, she said, We need access to your gate control architecture, all of it, not the maintenance manuals, the raw code, the field equations, the embedded protocols. A collective recoil, that was like asking to see the council's spinal cord. Elder San's eyes widened. Impossible. That knowledge is restricted. Then you will lose, Mara said simply. The chamber erupted, not in laughter this time, but in outrage. Voices overlapped through translators. Light flared, scent spiked, claws scraped. Arch-moderator Iln hammered the sound dampers, and the room quieted reluctantly. Iln's voice was colder now. Env Ellis, you are asking for the keys to civilization. Mara met the Thalen's glow, without blinking. I am asking for the ability to keep your doors from opening into a slaughter. PG-13 slaughter, I reminded myself grimly. My mind went to ships torn apart, not bodies, to station hulls breached, not gore. Still, the image chilled me. Drow leaned forward, voice low. And what will humans demand in return? Mara's mouth twitched again, that almost smile. Nothing, she said. The council did not know what to do with that. Some assumed it was a trick, others assumed it was arrogance, but it was neither, not entirely. It was a human rule. If we find a fire. Iln's glow flickered. Nothing is not a term recognized by treaty. Mara's voice softened. Then recognize it. Docking ring, later. After the hearing, Elder San ordered me to accompany him to the human vessel. It was not framed as a negotiation. It was framed as an inspection. But everyone knew what it was. The council needed more information, and the humans were the only ones holding it. Bay 17's airlock smelled of cold metal and faint lubricant. When the seal opened, a rush of warmer air flowed out, carrying a scent I hadn't expected. Coffee. Humans filled their ships with smells. Spices brewed stimulants, oils. Most species kept ship air as neutral as possible to avoid conflicts of biology. Humans tolerated discomfort and solved it with filters and compartments. Inside, the corridors were narrower than council ships, but everything was labeled. Arrows, color codes, tactile patterns on handrails. The lighting was bright white, harsh but consistent, no mood lighting, no ceremonial dimness. An engineer's ship. Mara led us to a lab bay. The device from the hearing sat inside a transparent containment field. Around it were screens displaying the signal waveform, and there, standing near the main console, was the human who made my throat sac tighten even more than Mara did. His name was Jonas Priet, according to the ship's roster. He wore a worn utility jacket and had the tired eyes of someone who had slept in short bursts for too many days. He didn't look like a diplomat. He looked like the kind of person who could rebuild a reactor with a wrench and spite. Mara introduced him simply, Chief Engineer. He built the interpreter. Jonas glanced at Elder San and me. Welcome aboard. Don't touch anything unless you want to sign the liability waiver. Elder San blinked, confused by the bluntness. Mara, as if translating human culture as much as language, added, that's humor. Jonas shrugged, sort of. Elder San cleared his throat sac. Engineer Priet. The council will require proof that this signal is not a human fabrication. Jonas rubbed his face. Grease smeared faintly. Sure, how do you want proof? We could show you the raw sensor logs from deep drift. We could show you our lab gate prototype trying to wake up. We could, I don't know, invite the signal over for tea. Elder San's eyes narrowed. Mockery will not help you. Jonah's gaze sharpened. I'm not mocking you, I'm coping. There's a difference. Mara stepped between them, calm as ever. We can provide logs. We can also provide a demonstration. Controlled. Elder San hesitated. A demonstration of what? Mara gestured to the lab model in the corner. It looked like a ring the size of a human torso, mounted on a frame. Cables ran into it like veins. Warning labels covered it. My stylus trembled slightly. That ring was not supposed to exist. Jonas patted the frame affectionately. We call her Ivy. She's a bad idea with good manners. Elder San's throat sac fluttered. You named it. Jonas looked offended. Of course, we named it. Another human assumption violation. They anthropomorphized tools. To most species that was superstition. To humans it was bonding. It made them care. Mara approached the console. We isolated a fraction of the handshake. If we feed it to Ivy, she will attempt an activation sequence. It will fail because she's not connected to a network. But the attempt will show you the protocol match. Elder San's gaze flicked to me. Record everything. I steadied my stylus. Jonas muttered, no pressure. Mara's fingers moved. The screens shifted. A low hum filled the room, and then Ivy's ring lit, not with light but with a subtle distortion, like air shimmering above hot metal. The hairs along my arms lifted. The smell of ozone intensified. The containment device emitted that bone-deep vibration again. Ivy responded. The ring's field fluctuated, trying to lock onto something that wasn't there. It made a sound like distant thunder muffled by water. The lab bay lights flickered. Elder San stepped back instinctively. Mara watched, jaw clenched. Jonas watched too, his eyes narrowed, as if listening to a machine's heartbeat. And then Ivy shut down, safety systems tripping. The hum died, silence. Elder San stared at the screens. The data displayed a match, phase offsets aligning with gate harmonic signatures. Even I, a minor scribe, could see it. Elder San's voice was quiet. This is real. Mara exhaled slowly. Yes. Jonas leaned back against the console, rubbing his eyes. Told you, would have been cooler if it opened into a beach. But no, apocalypse instead. Elder San turned to Mara. What do you need? And just like that, the Council's slow machinery had been forced into motion. Council Chamber, orbit of Vera, 2 days later. The Council did not like being forced. They convened emergency committees. They argued about jurisdiction. They demanded safeguards. Political obstacle 1, bureaucracy as armor. The Kethrix, led by Drawl, argued that isolating Sarnath Junction would cripple their defense posture and invite rival raids. The Thalen worried about destabilizing trade. The Lauren worried about famine in systems that depended on gate-shipped nutrient slurry. Elder San unexpectedly sided with the humans cautiously but firmly, and I watched him change just as I began to change. Fear had been my first reaction. Fear of the signal, fear of human unpredictability, fear of the Council's anger. Then confusion, because humans did not behave like any species I knew. And now, insight began to form. Humans were not trying to seize power. They were trying to prevent catastrophe, and they were willing to be hated for it. Council finally granted Mara and Jonas limited access, a controlled review of gate protocols under Thalen supervision, inside a sealed data vault. Scientific obstacle 2, the gate network's architecture was not fully understood by anyone, and the data was fragmented across species, ordered as leverage. In the vault, the air was colder, drier, smelling of old insulation. The walls were layered with radiation shielding. The lighting was dim, designed to protect Thalen photonic eyes from glare. Jonas sat at a console, surrounded by Thalen Guild analysts whose tendrils flickered with skepticism. Drawl stood behind them, arms folded, crest tight. Mara stood beside Jonas, calm as always, but I could see tension in her shoulders now. She was running on a finite supply of composure. The Thalen lead analyst, a being named Vesh, spoke through a translator that hummed with authority. Human engineer, your request for raw code is denied. You will be given interpreted protocol tables. Jonas stared. That's like asking me to fix a reactor with a painting of the wiring. Vesh's light flickered in irritation. It is sufficient. Jonas leaned forward. No, it's not. Your tables are sanitized. They omit failure modes. They omit emergency overrides. Vesh's tendrils tightened. Those are restricted. Jonas' voice sharpened. And those are exactly what the hostile signal is going to exploit. Mara raised a hand slightly. Vesh, please, we can work under supervision, we can keep copies sealed, we can. Drawl cut in. Humans want secrets, they always do. Mara turned to him. Counselor Draal, you keep saying always like you've known us your whole life. You've known us for 4 cycles. Draal's crest flared. 4 cycles is enough to see arrogance. Mara's calm cracked again, but only slightly. You mistake urgency for arrogance. Jonas muttered, and you mistake politics for safety. Vesh's light dimmed, contemplative. Thalen were cautious, but they were also curious. Curiosity was their pride. Prove, Vesh said, that your model requires these restricted protocols. Jonas exhaled. Fine, give me a sandbox, a partial dataset, let me show you the exploit path. If I can't, you keep your secrets. Vesh hesitated, then reluctantly extended a tendril in agreement. They gave Jonas access to a limited slice of the gate control schema. He worked like a storm. His fingers moved across the console, eyes bloodshot with focus. He spoke in short bursts, half to himself, half to Mara. Phase locks, old error handling, why would they? Oh, that's bad. Mara watched, occasionally offering a calm word. Slow down, breathes. Jonas snorted, breathing won't fix this. And then he froze. Found it, he whispered. Vesh leaned closer, light brightening. Explain. Jonas pointed at a protocol branch. Here, the gate's handshake accepts a legacy authentication token. It's meant for maintenance drones. Nobody uses it anymore, so you ignored it, but it's still there. And the signal is crafting that token. Vesh's glow flickered, alarm rising. Draal's crest tightened. That is impossible. Jonas looked back at him, eyes tired and flat. It's not impossible, it's just old. Mara's voice was quiet. How do we stop it? Jonas swallowed. We can patch it, maybe, but patching a gate network that spans, 200 systems in 8 days. Vesh's light dimmed. We cannot. Mara's gaze sharpened. Then we isolate Sarnath Junction, sever the nodes. Draal snarled, never. Ethical Obstacle 3, the cost of isolation, cutting off systems, starving trade routes, sacrificing economic stability for survival. Eldersan convened a smaller council session, restricted, to debate the severance. I sat behind him again, stylus trembling with the weight of history. Draal argued with fury. The Thalen argued with caution. The Lauren argued with fear of hunger. The Verani argued with fear of war. Mara listened. When it was her turn, she did not give a grand speech. She told a story. 2 days ago, she said, we pulled Lauren refugees out of a dying freighter. We didn't ask what they could pay. We didn't ask if it was politically convenient. We just did it. The Lauren delegates' vapor shifted, attention sharpening. Mara continued. If we had waited for paperwork, they'd be dead. If we had argued about jurisdiction, they'd be dead. If we had asked for tribute, they'd be dead. Her voice hardened slightly. I am not asking you to be human. I am asking you to be alive. Silence. Draal's crest trembled. You manipulate with emotion. Mara's eyes met his. You hide behind procedure. Eldersan surprised me by speaking then. Counselor Draal, he said, voice steady, the Concord will support isolation of Sarnath Junction, temporarily. With humanitarian corridors, established by conventional FTL. Draal stared at him as if he had betrayed his species, and in a sense he had. He had betrayed comfort for survival. The vote was close, but it passed. Sarnath Junction would be isolated. And yet, even as relief washed through the chamber, Jonah's earlier words echoed in my mind. Patching in 8 days, we were running out of time. Sarnath Junction, outer perimeter, day 8. The Council deployed fleets. Kethric's warships, broad and armored, took the lead. Thalen cutters formed a shimmering screen of sensor nets. Verani couriers ran messages between ships, their engines leaving faint blue trails in the void. The isolation plan was brutal and imperfect. Gate control nodes were physical structures attached to the junction's main ring. To sever them, you had to approach, cut power, and physically detached connections older than most civilizations. Mara and Jonas were on site, aboard their human vessel, which had been grudgingly allowed into the operation zone because their expertise was now undeniable. I was there too, because Elder San insisted on a liaison scribe to document Council action. The bridge of the human ship was cramped compared to Council flagships, but it was alive with sound, soft beeps, the murmur of human voices, the occasional clank from a loose tool in a cup holder. The air smelled of coffee and warm circuitry. Mara stood at the central display, watching the gate ring on screen, a colossal torus of dark metal, studded with docking pylons and maintenance scaffolds. Beyond it, the starfield was cold and indifferent. Jonas sat at a side console, chewing on something dried nutrient strip, I later learned, and muttering about harmonics. A Kethrix captain's voice came through comms, clipped and arrogant. Human vessel, maintain your position, do not interfere. Mara replied calmly, copy. The Kethrix ships moved in. Cutting teams approached the control nodes. And then, as if the universe had been waiting for the moment to prove Mara right, the gate ring emitted a faint glow. Not the full activation flare, those were bright, dramatic, visible from kilometers away, but a subtle shimmer, like a shadow turning liquid. Jonas sat up. That's it, handshake starting. My throat sac tightened. The ship's gravity felt heavier suddenly, as if fear had mass. Mara's voice was steady, status. Jonas' fingers flew, signal S hitting the node. It's doing the legacy token thing. It's trying to convince the gate it's maintenance. Mara's eyes narrowed. Can we block it? Jonas shook his head. Not from here, unless we. The Kethrix captain cut in. We see an anomaly. Cutting teams accelerate. We will sever node 1. Mara's jaw clenched. They're too slow. Jonas whispered, and if they sever mid-handshake? Mara looked at him. What happens? Jonas swallowed. Best case, gate fails safe. Worst case, gate tries to complete the handshake using fallback paths. It might open anyway, unpredictably. The Thalen sensor commander's voice joined the channel, calm but strained. Signal intensity increasing. It is harmonizing with the entire ring. The gate's shimmer intensified. On the main display, the ring's inner space distorted, stars bending slightly as if viewed through water. The Kethrix cutting teams reported. Node 1 partially severed. Resistance higher than expected. Draal's voice came through, commanding from his flagship. Continue, do not retreat, Kethrix do not retreat. Mara's eyes closed for a fraction of a second. When they opened, something in her expression had changed. The calm engineer diplomat was still there, but beneath it was another layer, a decision. She turned to Jonas. If the gate opens, where does it open? Jonas' hands paused. We don't know, but the signal's topology suggests it's aiming for the shipyard docks. Mara nodded. Then we can't let it open there. Jonas stared. Mara. She held his gaze. Can we redirect it? Jonas' jaw tightened. Maybe, if we feed it a different topology, if we make the gate think the shipyard is elsewhere. Mara's voice was quiet. Can we make it open into empty space? Jonas hesitated. Empty space is still somewhere, but yes, we could pick coordinates, a dead zone. Mara exhaled. Do it. Jonas' eyes widened. We don't have authorization. Mara's voice sharpened. We don't have time. This was the diplomatic reversal engine, humans winning without firing first, by forcing action through competence and moral conviction. Jonas turned back to the console, fingers trembling slightly. We'd need to inject a counter handshake. That means connecting to the ring. Mara looked at the display. The human ship was docked to a maintenance pylon at the ring's edge, closer than most. We can connect, she said. Jonas' voice was tight. Connecting means the ring can connect back. If the hostile entity rides the handshake, it could jump through us, into our systems, into our ship. Mara nodded, yes. Jonas stared at her. That's a sacrifice play. Mara's calm returned, but it was different now, less like a shield, more like a blade kept sheathed. If we find a fire, she said softly, we don't argue about whose house it is. Jonas swallowed hard. I hate that rule. Mara's mouth twitched. Me too. Sometimes. She opened comms. Arch-moderator Iln, Counselor Draal, this is Envoy Ellis. Your cutting teams will not sever in time. We are initiating a counter-handshake to redirect the gate's opening. Draal's voice exploded. You will not touch the ring. Iln's voice was sharp. Env, stand down, this is not authorized. Mara's voice did not rise. Then authorize it. Iln hesitated, a heartbeat that lasted too long. The gate's shimmer intensified again. The inner space of the ring began to darken, as if a shadow were forming. Jonas whispered, Mara, we are out of time. Mara spoke into comms, voice like steel wrapped in calm. I'm doing it. And then she cut the channel. Eldersan's voice came through privately, trembling. Envoy Ellis, do you understand what you are doing? Mara's gaze flicked to the small camera feed that showed my face in the liaison booth. She met my eyes through the screen. Yes, she said. And then, to my shock, she added, Selak. Record this. My throat sac tightened. Why? Mara's voice softened. Because if we fail, I want the council to know we didn't fail quietly. Jonas began the injection. The human ship systems hummed louder. Lights dimmed slightly as power rerouted. The smell of ozone filled the bridge. The translator unit on Mara's wrist went pale, white as bone, before the first line of counter-handshake code even finished compiling. Jonas stared at it. It's predicting. Ignore it, Mara said. Jonas' fingers struck the final command. The ship's docking clamp interface lit red, then green. Connection established. The gate ring responded. The vibration filled the ship, stronger now, rattling loose tools. My bones sang with it. My throat sac felt like it might collapse. The main display showed the gates in a space folding, forming a tunnel of darkness edged with faint light. A gate opening. The Kethric's cutting teams shouted in panic. Node 1 severed. Ring instability. Draal's voice roared over comms, drowned by alarms. Mara leaned forward, eyes fixed on Jonah's console. Redirect. Jonah's face was pale now too, sweat beaded on his forehead. It's fighting us, it's smart. Mara's jaw clenched. Then be smarter. Jonas laughed once, short and bitter. Sure, let me just outsmart an ancient god door. Mara's voice was steady. You built Ivy, you can do this. Jonas' hands moved again faster. He began altering the topology map, feeding the gate a lie, that the shipyard docks were not here, but their coordinates far out where nothing waited. The gate's tunnel flickered. For a moment it seemed to hesitate, and then the tunnel stabilized. Jonas exhaled. We got it, opening point shifting. Mara's shoulders sagged slightly, relief like a sudden loss of tension. But then the translator screamed, not in words, in pure tone, a shrill spike that stabbed my ears and made my vision blur. Its faceplate didn't just go pale, it went stark, almost luminous white. Jonas looked up, eyes wide. What the hell? Mara's hand shot to the translator as if to mute it. Too late. The gate's tunnel flared, and something moved inside it. Not a ship, not a fleet. A shape like a lattice of black glass, folding and unfolding, too large to fit and yet fitting anyway. It was not built like any vessel we knew. It did not have engines or hull plating. It was geometry given intent. The Thalen sensor commander's voice broke, light flickering with terror. Contact, unknown object emerging. Draal's voice, for the first time, held genuine fear. Fire. Kethric's warships unleashed beams. The beams struck the emerging lattice and bent, refracting like light through crystal, scattering harmlessly into space. The lattice continued. Mara's voice was quiet. It's using the gate field as armor. Jonas whispered, it's riding the handshake. And then the human reveal moment hit, not as a boast, but as a dreadful, beautiful truth. Jonas looked at Mara, and his voice was raw. The translator, it's not scared of the signal, it's scared because it understands it. Mara's eyes widened slightly. What? Jonas pointed at the translator's diagnostic readout. It's not modeling intent. It's recognizing language family structures. It thinks the signal is related to human language. Silence even amid alarms. My throat sac tightened so hard I couldn't breathe properly. Human language, related. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. That's impossible. Jonas shook his head, eyes wild. Unless humans were not strangers to the gates. Unless something about humanity's history was entwined with the builders. Unless the reason humans could build a lab gate, the reason they could isolate the signal, the reason their translator went pale, was because the gates had been waiting for them. Mara stared at the lattice emerging from the tunnel, and then she said something that made my blood run cold. It's not calling the gates, she whispered. It's calling us. Space above Sarnath Junction, climax. The lattice fully emerged, hanging in space like a wound made solid. It did not fire weapons, it did not broadcast threats, it simply listened. The gate tunnel behind it remained open, a dark corridor into somewhere else. Jonas' console screamed warnings. It's probing our connection, it's trying to handshake through our ship systems. Mara's voice snapped back to command. Cut the link. Jonas' hands flew, but the interface lagged. It's locked us, it's using our own connection as leverage. Draal roared over comms. Human ship, disengage or we will destroy you. Mara's eyes flashed. If you destroy us, the gate collapses unpredictably, and that thing opens into your shipyard anyway. Draal snarled, but he didn't fire, not yet. Iln's voice came through, strained but controlled. Env, Ellis, what is happening? Mara swallowed. For the first time her calm was visibly strained. It's probing, she said. And it's speaking in patterns our translator recognizes as similar to human linguistic roots. Iln's glow flickered in disbelief. Humans are not a builder species. Mara's voice was low. We didn't say we were. Jonas whispered, Mara, look. He pulled up a spectral analysis of the lattice's field emissions. The pattern was complex, but within it were repeating sequences, like phonemes, like rhythm, like the skeleton of language. And my stylus trembled as I realized this wasn't just a ship. It was a message, a mind. Mara stared at it. Then she did something no envoy should do. She opened a channel not to the council, to the thing. Her translator unit buzzed, faceplate still pale. This is Mara Ellis, she said. Human Env. You are in council space. State your intent. The lattice shifted, folding slightly. A sound came through, not audible, but translated into words by the trembling device. Return. One word, it hit the bridge like a physical force. Jonas whispered, return where? Mara's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly now. Return is not a destination. The lattice folded again, the translator buzzed. Return to function. Mara's brow furrowed. We are not your function. The lattice's field intensified. The gate tunnel behind it flickered, widening slightly. The Thalen sensor commander screamed. The gate is stabilizing. It's trying to open wider. Draal's voice broke. Stop it. Mara's eyes locked on the lattice. What are you? The translator's faceplate went so pale, it looked like it might crack. Custodian. Mara inhaled sharply. Custodian, a maintainer, not a conqueror. Then why the shipyard target? Why the manipulation? Jonas whispered, maybe it's not trying to invade. Maybe it's trying to repair, and we're the broken part. Mara's jaw clenched. A repair that kills us is still a weapon. The lattice shifted again, as if reacting to her tone. The translator buzzed. Non-compliance detected. Corrective action pending. The gate tunnel widened. That was the moment the council realized the truth, not that humans were powerful, but that humans were relevant in a way no one had anticipated. The ancient gate network, the foundation of civilization, had protocols that recognized humanity as a component, perhaps a missing one. And the galaxy's entire structure might have been built on an assumption that humans did not exist. Mara turned to Jonas. Options. Jonah's eyes were haunted. We can try to sever physically, blow the clamps, but if we do, the gate might snap open fully before collapsing, or we can feed it what it wants. Mara's voice was sharp. We don't know what it wants. Jonas swallowed. It wants compliance. It wants us to return to function. Mara stared at the lattice. Then she made a choice that still burns in my memory. She turned to the intercom and spoke to her crew. "All hands," she said, voice steady, "prepare for hard shutdown. We're going to cut ourselves out of the handshake. You will lose lights. You will lose gravity. Strap in." Alarms sounded. Humans moved with disciplined urgency, not panic. Straps clicked. Lockers sealed. Someone muttered a prayer I didn't understand. Elder San's voice came through privately. "Env, Ellis, you will die." Mara looked at the camera feed again. Her eyes met mine. "Maybe," she said, and then quietly she added, "but not alone." She turned back to Jonas. "Can we do it?" Jonas' jaw tightened. "We can, but it means wiping our systems, full cold reboot. We'll be blind and drifting, and if that thing follows." Mara nodded. "Do it." Jonas hesitated. "Mara, this ship is everything." Mara's voice softened. "I know." Then harder, "Do it." Jonas' fingers hovered over the command. The translator buzzed again, the lattice folding as if impatient. Corrective action in 3. Mara cut in, speaking directly to it. "No." A single syllable, human stubborn courage, distilled. Jonas hit the command. The human ship went dark. For a moment there was no sound but my own strained breathing and the distant vibration of the gate. Gravity vanished. My body floated, stomach lurching. Loose objects drifted. Someone swore softly. The bridge displays died. And in the darkness the only light was the gate tunnel outside, visible through the viewport as a faint, haunting glow. The lattice shifted. It probed. It found nothing. The human ship had become inert, a dead piece of metal no longer speaking. The gate tunnel flickered. The lattice hesitated. And then, to my astonishment, it began to withdraw. Slowly, folding back toward the tunnel like a creature retreating into its burrow. The gate tunnel narrowed. The Thalen sensor commander's voice, faint through emergency backup comms, whispered, "It's leaving." Draal's voice was ragged, "Do not let it return." But no one could stop it. Beams still bent uselessly. The only thing that had worked was human refusal, cutting themselves out of the conversation entirely. As the lattice vanished back through the shrinking tunnel, the gate's glow collapsed with it, snapping shut like a clenched fist. Silence. Darkness. Then emergency lights flickered on inside the human ship, dim red strips along the floor. The air smelled of burned insulation and coffee gone cold. Jonah's voice came through the darkness, hoarse. "Systems wiped. We're alive." Mara exhaled, a sound that was half relief, half grief, because the cost had been real. Their ship's data cores, years of exploration, maps, research were gone. They had burned their own memory to stay out of the custodian's grasp, and in doing so, they had saved Sarnath Junction. For now. Fallout Council Chamber. When we returned to Vera Station, the Council's mood had changed so completely that the chamber felt like a different place. No laughter, no casual mockery, only the quiet tension of beings who had looked into the mouth of something ancient and realized their teeth were made of paper. Mara stood again before the Council, but this time she was not alone. Jonas sat behind her, bandaged where he'd been thrown against a console during the hard shutdown. His eyes were hollow with exhaustion. Elder San stood beside me, posture straighter than I'd ever seen. Arch-moderator Iln spoke, voice subdued. Env, Ellis, your actions at Sarnath Junction prevented immediate incursion. The Council acknowledges this. Acknowledgement was the closest thing to praise the Council offered. Dral sat rigid, crest low. His eyes avoided Mara's. Iln continued. However, the entity you engaged spoke words, translated words. It called itself custodian. Mara nodded. Yes, the Iln's light flickered. And your engineer's analysis suggests the signal patterns are related to human linguistic structures. Mara's jaw clenched. Related, not identical, but yes. A murmur spread. Elder San leaned forward. Env, does humanity have any knowledge of the builders, of the gate's origin? Mara hesitated, then spoke carefully. Humans have myths, she said. Old stories about doors in the dark, about voices in radio noise, about dreams of machines calling our names. We thought they were superstition or coincidence. We didn't build our civilization on them. Dral's beak plates clicked softly, bitter. Yet you built a lab gate. Jonas muttered, because we can't leave well enough alone. Mara glanced back at him, a flicker of affection in her eyes. Then she faced the Council again. We don't know what the custodian is, she said, but we know what it does. It enforces function. It sees non-compliance as a defect. Iln's voice was quiet. And it sees humans as function. Mara swallowed. Maybe, or maybe it sees our language as a key, a compatibility layer. Elder San's throat sac fluttered. Meaning. Mara's voice hardened. Meaning, your gate network might have been designed with an assumption that humans would eventually join it. And now something is trying to force that assumption. Silence. I felt my internal arc complete in that moment. Fear had become confusion, confusion had become insight, and insight became respect edged with terror. Because if humanity was a missing component in a galaxy-spanning machine, then humans were not just another species. They were a variable the universe had been waiting to resolve. Arch-moderator Iln spoke again. Envoy Ellis, the Council has debated your earlier request, access to gate control architecture. Dral's crest twitched, unhappy. Iln's light steadied. We will grant humans restricted access under joint supervision, not as observers, as partners. A ripple of shock. A Council concession. Mara did not smile. She simply nodded once, as if she had expected this outcome because she had forced reality to make it inevitable. Thank you, she said. Iln added, in return, humans will accept a provisional council seat. Another ripple. Status offered not as charity, but as necessity. Dral's voice was low. And if humans refuse? Mara's gaze moved to him. We won't. Dral's crest flared slightly, suspicion returning. Why? Mara's answer was simple. Because if the gates are going to call us, we'd rather be in the room when they do. That line, quiet, practical, sent a chill through the chamber. Epilogue, observation deck, Vera Station. Days later, I stood on an observation deck overlooking the gate ring in the distance. It hung against the stars like a silent question. The station's artificial dawn lighting washed the deck in pale gold. The air smelled faintly of polished stone and recycled oxygen. My throat sac was relaxed for the first time in weeks. Mara Ellis stood beside the viewport, hands behind her back. She looked smaller here, framed by the vastness outside, but not fragile. Elder San stood on her other side, posture thoughtful. I approached, stylus tucked away. I was not here as a scribe now. I was here as someone who needed to understand. Env, I said softly. Mara turned. Selak. It startled me that she remembered my name. Counselors rarely remembered scribes. Why did your translator? I hesitated, searching for the right words. Why did it show fear? Mara's eyes flicked to the small unit on her wrist. Its faceplate was normal now, a calm gray. It wasn't fear, she said. Not exactly, it was a warning. Elder San frowned. Machines do not warn. Mara looked at him. Humans build machines that care, sometimes that's a flaw. Jonas had said something similar about naming Ivy, bonding. I swallowed. What did it warn you of? Mara's gaze returned to the gate ring. Her voice was quiet. It warned me, she said, that the custodian's language matched patterns in our oldest broadcasts, the ones we sent into space before we even had FTL. It warned me that we might have been answered a long time ago. Elder San's throat sac fluttered with discomfort. And you did not tell the council. Mara's mouth tightened. I told them what they needed to act, not what would make them panic. That was diplomacy, real diplomacy, not treaties and tribute, but managing fear so action could happen. I felt a strange gratitude toward her then, an alien gratitude, reserved, cautious, but real. What happens now? I asked. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. Now we study, we patch, we build failsafes, we make sure the gates don't open where they're told without asking why. Elder San looked at her. And if the custodian returns? Mara's voice was steady, but there was steel beneath it. Then we talk again, or we shut everything down again, or we break the gate network if we have to. Elder San recoiled. Break it, that would collapse civilization. Mara's gaze did not waver. Civilization is people, not doors. Another human violation, another human truth. I watched the gate ring, silent and cold, and in the far corner of my vision my infrared sight caught a flicker, so faint it might have been sensor noise. A pulse, a rhythm, not a handshake, something else, a second signal. Mara's translator unit hummed softly, almost like a throat clearing. Its faceplate did not go pale. It went attentive. Mara noticed. Her posture stiffened. She did not speak, not yet. But her eyes, reflecting the distant gate, held a quiet certainty that made my throat sac tighten again, not with fear this time, but with anticipation. The council had laughed. The translator had gone pale. And now the galaxy, finally, was beginning to listen.